The following transmission contains unencrypted instances of explicit language. Mature audiences are cleared to proceed.
You're late.
Yeah, that's what my mother said.
Sergeant David Mohajir, born in 1985, 6'2", 250 pounds, brown hair, brown eyes, training in Japanese martial arts and online marketing.
You want to look at my ass, too?
You're working for me, Dave.
I'm working for this podcast.
Well, in this office, I am the podcast.
They didn't tell me your name.
Well, then how do you know you're in the right podcast?
They said you were a serious son of a bitch that didn't have any sense of humor. Can't be two of you.
Shall we begin? Let's begin.
Yale, the Skull and Bones Seeker Society, the grab for Nazi and Jewish scientists immediately following the fall of Berlin, Guatemalan grasshoppers, South American coups, and the absolute debacle that was the Bay of Pigs. Robert DeNiro takes his final stab at directing in an effort to bring all of this cool stuff to the screen in 2006. Does it work? Is it any good? I'm Todd.
And I'm Dave, and we like to talk about spy movies.
The Good Shepherd is a fantastic opportunity to tease apart the mysteries and myths of the origins of the CIA, and we're excited as all hell to do that in this episode of Spies Like Us. Robert DeNiro had worked on this for there's different accounts. Some people like to say 7 years, some people say 9.
Oh, wow, no, I didn't.
Right. Well, it's actually a little more complicated than that. This script was written first in 1994 and was written with Francis Ford Coppola in mind.
Oh.
At Columbia Pictures. Coppola eventually dropped the project. He said he just couldn't relate to the characters. And then over the years...
That's pretty funny.
Right. Due to their lack of emotion.
Yeah. That's pretty funny.
Which is interesting, because that's a charge that some people level against this film.
Mm-hmm.
I know we have our own thoughts on that.
Right.
But just years went by and just different management changes at Columbia just kept shifting things around, putting this thing back and back until eventually they had a studio head that said he didn't want to do any spy movie unless they could get someone like Tom Cruise to star in it. Oh,
man, that would have been gross.
Yeah, right.
Tom Cruise is James Angleton? No, I'm good.
Right.
That's a hard pass, bro.
So clearly the Mission Impossible movies must be out there and performing well at this time.
Well, it would have been around... Oh, no. The first one didn't come out till, the late 90s, right?
Really? Let's check it real quick. Hey, Maura, what's the year on Mission Impossible 1?
The first iteration of the Mission Impossible cinematic reboot starring Tom Cruise was released in May of 2006, an obvious grabs for the summer popcorn season. The Good Shepherd is released in early December of the same year, a season that studios usually reserve for a grab at Oscar attention.
Yeah, so Mission Impossible, I guess, I didn't write the exact years down here. Not all this happened in 1994, but like I said, for years, it just kind of sat around.
Right.
Definitely long enough for Mission Impossible to have come out and to have kind of, to a certain extent, kind of changed people's perceptions of what they're looking for out of a spy movie.
Right.
Or at least a spy movie that's going to deliver, huge summer numbers.
Right.
So, John Frankenheimer eventually, signed on and said he'd make the film with MGM, and he had just worked with Robert De Niro on Ronin. Awesome movie.
Oh, that was a really good movie.
Someday, for sure,
yeah.
for sure. He wanted De Niro to star in it. De Niro said, "Nah, I'm not going to star, but I'll be in it." Right. And so that got, some legs back up under it. So the thing is, Robert De Niro had been working on his own CIA story for 7 years. He was really fascinated with the subject. So this script and him just kind of intersected in this weird way.
Uh-huh.
This kind of abandoned child of a project.
Right.
That, and just this Frankenheimer De Niro connection, just kind of breathes enough life into it to kind of say okay, well, we'll do this. And then they start producing it, and Frankenheimer dies.
Yeah. Oh man.
Uh-huh.
He never got to see it. That sucks.
Oh yeah. So, kind of, I guess this movie, in a way, it just kind of This movie kind of just happened to Robert De Niro. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, it just kind of fell in his lap.
It was
Almost like it was planned or something. Like it was in the stars.
close enough to the kind of movie he had wanted to make, but not exactly. But here it is, and it just kind of, like, it's all the other parents are dead. You're the sole survivor.
Yeah.
Taking care of this little baby.
Yeah.
There's some thought too that 2006. So, like, previously, studios didn't really want to do spy movie that's not like a super action movie. But what's going on around 2006, like 2004, 5, 6, when this movie actually does, actually get made, is there's kind of a like national discussion, re-examination of the CIA going on in the U.S. In the
I remember
post 9/11
Yep.
stuff. We haven't gotten up to where we get like real like re-examinations like Zero Dark 30 and shit like that. But it is, there's I think that kind of has a little to do with it too, of how the movie actually comes out, is that oh hey, CIA's in the news. People are kind of talking about, let's say that the character of the CIA is very much on.
Well, I know they had to look back because the signals were all there for 9/11, and everybody pretty much collectively felt there was a failure in intelligence.
We're also like kind of re-examining the CIA in terms of not just competence, but like, what are you guys actually doing in this war of terror? Like, what's this Guantanamo Bay we keep hearing about?
Right. Oh yeah.
I see what you mean. That kind of stuff. So yeah. So you can see how like the audience, studio exec would say, a movie about the character, the soul of the CIA, which this movie is kind of about. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, absolutely. The heart and soul. Yeah.
Right. We got to preface this one with a discussion about the historical accuracy. I don't want to go deep into it.
Right.
Because we got plenty of podcasts to do, like, on some of the details.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of historical accuracy and a lot of historical inaccuracy. In fact, it's quite a bit of inaccuracy, but it's still kind of loosely got his historical accuracy.
The movie doesn't even purport to be a real story. It doesn't even say like based on a real story.
No, it doesn't.
But they've just got like a.
I remember the ads. The ads when they came out, they tried to make it look like a documentary. Like they made it look all secretive and like this is going to be unclassified information. Whoever was in charge of marketing gets an A+ from me. Major marketing points.
Yeah, well, that only works if it not only gets people to the theater, but if they're not like disappointed with what they get.
Right.
That's part of it. Sometimes that kind of stuff can backfire. I think like an example I always think of is V for Vendetta was marketed as a completely different movie than what it actually is.
Oh, really? Well, I mean, I think the marketing did a good job of their advertising. Like they never said it was based on a true story, and neither does the movie really purport that. But the advertising to entice people into theaters got me in because it made it look like this is going to be declassified information and this is all real and secrets. I remember that I drug my entire family out to see this. I made my parents take me and my sister out to watch this movie.
Oh yeah, I believe that. So yeah, it's a weird animal because it doesn't, in no way does it claim to be historical, but then it just has all these characters that are such obvious stand-ins for real people that kind of have similar relationships, and they even use some of the names like let's see, the Alan Dulles character is named Philip Allen.
Right.
The Allen in there.
Yeah.
and stuff like that. But then you have some characters that, even though you can kind of tell because of the way they're arranged with each other and the position and the relationships they have against each other, you can kind of tell who they are. But then when you look at them, and here I'm talking about the Kim Philby character, I think in particular, like that they're actually like there's more things that are not Kim Philby about the Kim Philby character than there are that are like Kim Philby.
Oh, absolutely.
Big, huge, major ones to point out, just going in there, is that we don't have any evidence. Like it's not even really claimed that like Alan Dulles was profiteering off of like South American hanky panky.
Right. Well, that CIA article, in fact, said there has never been a director accused of anything remotely close to that. No director has ever been accused of what would you call that? Profiteering. Yeah. Not a single director's ever been accused of anything remotely close to that, is what they were saying. So it's kind of fudged in there.
And we've got a prominent Soviet defector that Matt is a historical guy that turns out to be a spy in the movie, but he wasn't in real life, or at least nobody says he was.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff like that. But I think, those are the big ones. And then the other one, which I think we're going to cover as soon as we get into the briefing room, is that this movie really does like buy into the what would you say? Would you call it a conspiracy theory that the CIA was like kind of birthed out of Skull and Bones?
Yeah. I don't think that's accurate. I think a lot of Skull and Bones guys there's been people from Skull and Bones that have been in the CIA, but it didn't come out of Skull and Bones. It mainly came out of OSS. But one of the big accuracies was how much England helped our intelligence and setting up a central intelligence.
Voice pattern recognized. Retinal scan complete. Validating security clearance. Clearance granted. You may now enter the briefing room.
Matt Damon's recruitment starts really back in his recruitment to the Skull and Bones. This is, I guess, his first taste of secrecy and being able to keep secrets. And this is where those in the know are recruiting for the CIA. Interesting enough, the whole film kind of is way out of a timeline. It's not in chronological order. It jumps in time. And his different styles of glasses were a huge help in determining what time period are we in. Are we in college? Are we in early CIA? Are we in latter CIA? You know, I think there were 3 styles of glasses that he wore. And in this one, it's the very circular 50s. You know, I don't think there were many choices back then. It was just, here's some glasses.
thin gold rims.
Yeah.
But, later in life, he trades for Ray-Bans.
Yeah, when he's making that sweet manager exec type of pay, I guess, and he can get those sweet Ray-Bans. Yeah. So I mean, I think the film is inaccurate in saying that the CIA was born out of Skull and Bones, but Angleton actually was a bonesman.
That part is true.
Yeah, but William Hurt's character, Philip Allen, which is supposed to be Alan Dulles, was supposed to be the president of the Skull and Bones, and that Dulles like got into the CIA through that, but Alan Dulles never went to Yale, so it's not possible for him to have been a bonesman.
Right, and they make a big deal too of the Richard Hayes character being a fellow bonesman with Matt Damon, and that supposing to be this like permanent, unshakable bond between them, you know, that transcends all other loyalties. Right,
and they're like oversight for each other, because Richard Helm, the character that was meant to be Richard Helms is like the secret keeper, and he's always watching people, he's kind of like the shadow that watches everything, and he, grows into that same role in the CIA. But I think him and Matt Damon's character are meant to kind of be some amount of like co-oversight, maybe. There's like a little quip at the end where like Richard's like, hey, maybe you even got a secret about me in that drawer of yours, So it's he's supposed Richard is the guy that kind of is always watching the watchers, I guess is the way you would describe it. Yeah. But I'm not even sure that Richard Helms was a bonesman. I think the only CIA director was H.W. Bush. Daddy Bush was a bonesman.
And that's when I remember this theory, first being floated around, and I just pretty much bought it. I didn't look into it. That was like kind of pre-internet for me.
Yeah.
But just kind of floated around, and even when I saw this movie, like I thought that all of this Skull and Bones connection was legit, and it was only like doing the digging in for this podcast that I found out like not a lot of there.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And funny enough, Bush never was in intelligence. He I don't think he had any intelligence experience. He just kind of was thrown in there after Colby had to forcibly resigned after the whole Watergate issue, which that's a whole rant for me some other time. But but Bush being a bonesman never was in intelligence. He just became the director. So the idea that there was this like deep connection, I'm not sure is accurate at all. Right. But what's cool, one of the accuracies that we can get into, Angleton was a poet. And I think that's really cool. That's one of my favorite kind of tie-in, or I guess characteristics of the movie, is that Edward studied poetry. And, before we discover Professor England is a MI6 agent or whatever that was working undercover, we have this really cool scene where he's teaching Edward poetry, and he's, Edward writes a poem and starts, and the professor goes on this little quick lecture about reading between the words, seeing what's behind them, the meaning between rhyme and reason, like, yeah. And I think it really sets the tone for the film, because this is what, as Edward's going through the CIA, or he's going through Skull and Bones, he's learning poetry, the language of not speaking directly, he's being procured by the FBI, so I really like this moment where the fact that he's a poet really helps. He only says things that he means to say, and he always is reading behind what people are saying and what they mean. So I really dug that a lot.
That's a good take. I like that.
Yeah.
And and he's not just a poet. He's like kind of a I don't want to go so far as to say prodigy.
Right.
But he's the guy that the English professor is like tapping to be like the editor of Yale's poetry magazine.
Right.
So he's like top of his class in poetry.
Right. He's definitely got the teacher's attention.
Which does make it seem weird. Like I don't even understand what the professor's trying to accomplish when he, it looks like he's making a pass at Edward.
Oh, the cane.
Yeah,
that was cute. Right. Yeah, right. I think he was, but I'm not sure.
And
I'm not sure if he's recruiting him or if he's trying to make a pass at him.
I think there's probably a little of column A and a little column B there.
Yeah.
Why not have your cake and eat it too?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Right.
But it is really weird that like one of his plays to like keep Edward kind of wants to leave, and one of the professor's plays is to like say, oh, but listen, I've been writing something, like would you listen to it? And he just straight up rips off, like he's just ripping off some other poet.
Right. And it's not even a big poet, but like, here's your top student in poetry. What are you doing? Like, you're not going to get by this. What is he trying to impress him or something? It was confusing. Really, really confusing.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with -5 points for him not expecting Edward to catch that, and also it's kind of an unforced error, you know.
Right. It was not necessary. You know what I mean? It just he threw himself under the bus really for no reason.
If you
Which
know poetry well enough to pass yourself off as one of the top poetry professors at Yale,
right, right.
you can probably jot down a couple original lines.
The poet thing really shot himself in the foot because now his whole operation was blown.
If English professor is behind the scenes working with General Donovan, then that's enough for him to say like, hey, one of your Yale boys like rooted me out. Like you might want to put that guy on a list of people that,
right.
you might be interested in using, and that's exactly what Donovan gets around to doing. So when Edward does get tapped, he gets sent over to serve in England during World War II.
Yep.
And that's where he runs into the English professor again and finds out that he was MI6 the whole time.
Right.
And where he now becomes Edward's tutor in earnest.
He teaches him all of the important factors, not to trust anybody, what you do when you're approaching an asset, when you're threatening them. There's a lot of different ways to flip an asset, but one of them is with threats. And so what we have with English professors, we get like a nice montage where we have a bunch of scenes where people are acting out what English professor is saying, and one of them is you make them make a decision. You show them a dilemma for themselves, and you make them make a decision quickly. Don't give them time to think. You make it sound like you're going to be their savior. You're there to help them and stuff like that, and you just shove it in their face like, look, here's the situation. You could be in a lot of trouble. I'm here to help you, but I need your decision right away. And this is really important for later in the story.
Because?
Oh, you're right. Oh, yeah. Because later, there's a great scene with Ulysses and Matt Damon, or Edward, or I guess we'll call him Mother at that point, where Ulysses does exactly what Edward had learned from the British professor early on, where he's faced with the decision. Your son is in danger. Your son had made this mistake. We're going to kill him. I need your decision right away. And so it's like he's already been through intelligence and he's already been given this lesson, like from this top-notch spy, and so he's able to deal with situations like that. And I thought it was a nice playback.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, big time. Black propaganda he mentions, which I'm a little confused by this wiki entry. You want to see if you can help me tease it apart, or do you know black propaganda?
Well, yeah, I think the black propaganda was setting out a story that Hitler had syphilis, right?
I guess, but that just seems like regular propaganda.
This is something where, if like a false flag type of propaganda, where you would have a story come out like your enemy put out the story and it makes them look really bad.
Right. Okay. But now it doesn't exactly click though with what we see Edward do with it. Like we get this montage. He's receiving all this wisdom from English professor, but we don't actually see him putting it into practice. He does plant the syphilis rumor, but the syphilis rumor goes out as on the radio as British professors, like English doctors, have determined that like Hitler's got syphilis or something. Black propaganda would be like doing it so that like someone else other than us,
right? Like
saying,
Germans, if Germans had come out and reported the syphilis story,
right? Or at least you somehow claim that they did, or make it look like they did.
Right, exactly.
You're getting two things accomplished. You're discrediting the source.
Right.
You're causing that confusion.
Right,
like,
exactly.
which is what the English professor is preaching, but it's not exactly what Edward's practicing. I just want to give some slight -5 points there.
Yeah, we don't actually see, Edward in the entire film doesn't do anything he was taught. Really?
He really doesn't. I'm glad you keyed in on that too.
Yeah, but I mean, he is the head of counterintelligence, so I'm guessing him learning what was being taught to him is how he's able to spot spy. Because, you know, I think the British professor had said the people you're watching have an inquisitive mind and an obsessive attention to detail or something like that.
Right.
So I think the lessons help him spot spies, but we never see him actually act them out, especially when he is a spy in Germany. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But you know, that comes down to really the heart of this movie, which is like, it's not like a spy procedural. The movie is much more concerned with the way that this world affects the personal lives of the people involved and their relationships.
Yes.
That's what the movie's really about.
Right.
Which
And
might have contributed to the mixed reviews on it.
Right. I also think the critics didn't like it because they didn't understand what was going on. There's not really any hand-holding in this movie whatsoever.
So much is implied.
Right.
That you and not stated directly, 100%.
Right. Like it's always like a look or a statement or like a handshake or like one shot, you know, of a scene, and you just got to piece. We had to piece together a lot of the tradecraft or a lot of the spy. The story of the people's lives was very, very much in the front, but the story of the spying we had to really piece together, which was fun for us.
With a few exceptions, there's some direct ones.
Right.
The part you were talking about like how you need to like blindside someone with you know, your dirt on them and not give them time to think. We get to see the Kim Philby character pull that off, you know, while English professor is teaching Edward. I might have been happier just letting Edward have done that himself.
Right.
But either way, that's my number 2 best tradecraft. It's one of the most like clear examples that we do get to see in the film of like, this is how you do it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I like that a lot. And it was a typical montage shot of like, you know, master student time where they're learning, you know, very, yeah. And I think it was really well done, but yeah, we had to figure everything else out.
So now let's do the fall of the English professor.
Okay. So interesting. Our Kim Philby character, which we don't know is Kim Philby at this point in the film. We just think he's some British spy or whatever. But, you know, that character approaches Richard and Edward. You know, Richard being the fellow bonesman that is the keeper of the secrets, so to speak, and Edward, Matt Damon. They meet at like a lounge somewhere, and our Kim Philby character delivers some bad news of our poor English professor. That, you know, he's been not careful with his associations, and it becomes clear both at Yale and you know, while he's being teaching that the English professor, I guess, is homosexual, is the way we'll call it, and the Kim Philby character implies that he's been not discreet with the partners he's had, and that he's been letting information out. So they have to clean house, so to speak. And this is where Edward asks Richard, like, well, why are they asking us to do this? This is a British problem, not our problem. And Richard's like, the British are a civilized people, you know, they don't eat their own, you know. So they want someone else to do their dirty work for them. And Richard's basically like, look, you have an opportunity to take care of this yourself. We'll get someone else to do it, but because this is your professor and you have an emotional tie, which I think is super, super samurai, you know, like very heavy, like, like mafia type, like, look, this is your professor. You care about this man. We're giving you an opportunity to take care of it where somebody else will. It was super like just thrown into his lap, and he's like, ah, fuck, And so there's this nice line that Philby gives out, if he doesn't listen to reason, you might want to tie your shoes, which is important because Edward takes the professor out for a walk, and he's trying to be like, hey, you ever think about teaching again? You were a great teacher. You go, why don't you start? I've taught every day. Well, he's like, oh, and then he's like, oh, I see. They don't like, they're suspicious of me. Well, I am who I am, blah, blah. He's like, yeah, but you've done your duty. It's time for you to retire. And he goes, listen, Edward, I've been part of this. This is a dirty business, and I've been part of it too long. And he was like, your little schoolboy out there might want my response. I understand if you want to tie your shoe. And it was super sweet. He gets down on one knee and he ties Edward's shoes. And I think this is really where the title of the film is really important, because at the opening of the film, it has the Bible verse of the Good Shepherd. The Good Shepherd lays his life down for his friends, and we have these two good shepherds, mainly English professor and a Robert DeNiro character, who's Bill Donovan. And so here we have English professor tying Edward's shoe, and it's like the Jesus with his disciples where he's washing their feet. It's very humble. Like, he comes down and, I think the line is just like, no disciple is greater than no servant is greater than their master. So if you see me serving you, you need to serve each other, And so we have English professor getting down on one knee, tying Edward's shoes in a very humbling position. And he's talking about, like, we're bootmakers. We're all bootmakers to kings. You might want to find some new shoes. There's a wonderful place down the street. It's such a, I think, beautiful moment, because here English professor is passing the torch to Edward, from one good shepherd to another, type of thing. And I thought it was really sweet. But Todd and I have a little bit of a disagreement.
Yeah, I want to quibble with some of the details here. Like some stuff just doesn't click together. Not to take anything away from like the simple beauty of the moment that you're describing.
Right.
It's kind of like I like where they got to. I didn't really like how they got there.
Right,
you know
right,
what I
right.
mean?
Yes.
So now just a small correction. You said. I believe this is a correction. You said that they thought he was passing information. I don't think that's the case. I think they were just worried that he could or might, say something he's not supposed to. And also being indiscreet with his choice of partners,
Mm-hmm.
I think that could also be like uptight Cambridge code for gay. Like that it's not necessarily that they're concerned about the specific young men that the professor might be dallying with, but that they're just concerned that he's dallying with homosexuals at all, which was I think up until very recently, and maybe even still true, that's a kind of a big thing that I think it's considered by the culture of the universe of the movie, historically, that just being gay was considered to be a big liability in intelligence services because that's something that the enemy could use against you,
Right.
threaten to out you.
But they didn't need a code word because Philby or Kim Philby character definitely says, and his sexual tastes.
Right.
So,
Yeah,
so
I know.
it being indiscreet with partners, I don't think is a code word. I think I think it is the partners. I mean, we had this discussion. I think English professor set this whole thing up himself. I think he was throwing himself under the bus. That he had done his time. He didn't really want to, be around this world anymore. And I think he's the one that planted the idea. And I think he knew because English professor is teaching counterintelligence to Edward.
I dislike that for this reason. He's just spent all this time preaching this stuff to Edward, And then he just suddenly flips around and says, like, "This is bullshit. I'm gonna suicide by CIA."
Right.
and you should get out and not do any of the things that I just spent all these, months and months teaching you.
Yeah, but that's not. But I mean, he wasn't saying it's bullshit. That's what he says. He was like, "It's a dirty business. I've been part of it for far too long," is what he says. I think he's, paid his dues. He's done his service, and he can't retire. You know what I mean? Like, what's retirement for him? What is he gonna go like play like polo or something or what? No, like he's seen too much shit in his day. He doesn't want to live with those nightmares anymore, type of thing. And this is really, I think, Edward's first introduction to how bad the business is. He just had to make the call to have his teacher murdered. You know what I mean? He had to facilitate the murder of his teacher, who was a wonderful man to him, was a great teacher, not only a great teacher, but was like someone to look up, a good shepherd. You know what I mean? So I think the professor had seen days like that where he had to kill people he was close to. He made that line. He was just like, "I hope one day that you can meet someone that you trust." I'm sad to say I haven't. He's been through that world where he can't trust anybody, where people have stabbed him in the back, and he's had to make calls like that. So I think he just wanted out, and the torch had been passed. He handed down his, and there's also, since we're obviously doing a lot of biblical references with the title and this type of moment, this is his Christ moment where he's kind of like laid his life down, and it's now up to Edwards to carry the torch. But I think that line, he's just like, "Get out while you can, while you still have a soul," is really important, because this is the time that Edward could walk. It's like, look, once you're in for life. That's it. Like, get out while you can. Once you're in. And it's you got to be prepared to see dirty things like this. I think the whole thing was plain, but I do agree with you that a lot of things could have been executed better or said better, maybe.
Well, I think we'll just move on with my caveat that I just didn't swallow it quite as easily as you did.
Right? Yeah.
I think your romanticism is showing pretty strongly in your which is great. Yeah. That's a lot of times that's what you want to be to appreciate a movie like this. Is you want to be like, as Philby said, you got
to be a hopeless romantic. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. To be in this business.
Yeah.
But Professor dies. The war ends. Yeah. Everyone's scrambling to snap up all the scientists, all the V2 rocket scientists, and we've always heard that this was true, right?
Right.
We absolutely believe that this was a primary thing. I like the way it's handled, just in that one scene in the office where Edward is he's being brought people that are Germans that are claiming that they can help them find this scientist or that scientist in exchange for getting me the fuck out of here before Nuremberg happens.
Right, yeah. Right.
When he gets back from World War II is when we start introducing his family life as a major element in the film. Right. And, there'd been some setup on this. We know that, he was in love with Laura, the deaf girl, but then, he had an indiscretion with Angelina Jolie, and she gets pregnant, and she gives birth to their son while he's off doing his intelligence work in the war.
Right.
So he's coming home to a marriage that really
never existed.
Yeah, pretty much. And his son is kind of grown up.
It looks like he might have been like 4
or 5, yeah,
something like that.
I feel like she might have said 6 years.
Oh well, yeah. Oh, that's right, because she says 6 years is a long time.
I think that's what's clicking for me.
She basically confesses that she had slept with someone.
Right, and he reciprocates. He says it's a mistake, but it's still like it just gets to hang there between them.
Right.
They don't share a bed at this point. She's got him set up in the guest room, and he gets to obviously the first thing he does, the huge thing for him is, actually getting to meet his son face to face.
Right, exactly.
And
And that, yeah.
of course, his son is like, this. We're gonna guess 4 years old, 4 or 5.
Right.
Has no idea who this guy is. Somebody told him, "This is your dad." He probably doesn't even really understand what that means.
Yeah, right.
But in clunky 1950s dad style, I guess, Edward presents his son with something that he made for him. And we had established, at least in the film, because we've seen, scenes of the future, we've established that Edward likes to build ships in bottles.
Yeah.
Right?
That's like he likes putting the time in and putting it together, yeah.
And he's made this little tiny model ship that he's encased in a glass medallion, which is cool because you can't give a 4-year-old a ship in a bottle.
Right, right.
Just gonna break that shit. But this thing's like a solid hunk of glass,
Right.
And it's got the British flag for some reason. Why British flag? Give your kid one with an American flag.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, I mean, the British Navy, maybe. The type of ship, I guess. But he also had a pirate flag on it too. There's a British flag and a pirate flag.
Right, which is conceivably a callback to Skull and Bones.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And I'm not sure about this, but I will go ahead and mention it, that there's 15 sails on the ship, which currently, Skull and Bones recruits 15 members each year.
Oh, really? Oh, that's cute.
Right,
yeah.
But I don't think that was true at the time. But it still could have been something that someone like found out and slipped in there, or it could just be a fucking coincidence. 15.
Right. Well, I mean, he makes a big deal about counting the sales to his kids, so there might be there's probably and little Eddie becomes a bonesman later. So there's got to be there's a reason why that number is there.
I like to think so.
Mm-hmm.
I like to think so, but it can't exactly be confirmed. And if it was confirmed, then it's a slight error on the scriptwriter's part.
Right.
But the important thing is that this little ship in a bottle kind of token is like this talisman that now connects the father and son.
Right.
Right. And one of their big, when after Eddie's grown up some more, one of their big nice scenes that they have together is him teaching his son the craft of he helps his son build his own first ship in a bottle.
Yeah.
And it's at that point that Eddie turns to his father and says that he's gonna have this singing recital and that he'd very much like his father to come. And so this seems like a turning point that in that aspect of when he's really beginning to actively seek his father's approval.
Yes.
All connected with the ship in a bottle. So that's so that's an important. It's a talisman.
Yes. Definitely should underscore that.
Right. Because it's gonna come back.
Yeah. But enough about little Eddie. I think we need to talk about Angelina Jolie. I was insanely blown away by her performance.
I would temper that a little. Insanely blown away? No, but I liked it. I loved it.
Yeah. I think it was just unexpected. Yeah.
Especially because it's a pretty unrewarding role. There's not a lot on the page for her to do.
Right.
But she does it really well in my opinion.
I think there's a big difference, I mean, this is an all-star cast, so you already have a high bar of acting here, and then Angelina shows up, and in every scene, she just steals the shot. You know what I mean? It's just she just owns her role. She plays it so. That's it.
She's very magnetic. She manages to be highly sympathetic and unsympathetic at the same time. marriage is really complicated by itself.
Yeah.
This marriage that they have is extremely complicated, and I think she's the main reason that we really buy the tension between them.
I mean, the putting him up in the guest room makes sense. They hadn't seen each other, so they're not gonna like just snap into like a regular marriage, when they didn't even have a marriage to begin with, because he was shipped off like right after they were married, So, but yes, I really feel for her character because she's just always waltzing around in uncertainty with no information. She doesn't know anything. She doesn't even really have a husband. Her only life is her baby boy. And it's just kind of sad. And I think she really owns this character very, very well.
DeNiro in an interview said, in one interview that I watched, he said that he had felt kind of bad about asking her to do it because he thought that the role was like beneath her.
Right.
But that he was just like, like the same thing that we're expressing, like that he himself was really, really just floored and super impressed with what she brought to it.
Yeah, and she definitely owned it, and she she definitely brought the acting.
Right.
And I think she stole a lot of the scenes just because of how powerful she was.
And all this is going to build up to a very important scene, and I think it's the critical one that she has to be there for. But that final ball kind of gets rolling with. So now this is now many years later, right? We've gotten home. We're going through the marriage. Years are passing. I think the entire film is supposed to cover, I think, like 22 years of time.
Right, something like that.
Probably from recruitment to Yale to the beginning of the CIA, and that would clock because that would be like if 61, I think is Bay of Pigs. So what are we talking, like 39 would be induction into Skull and Bones? That all seems to clock, right, with the World War II track and everything.
Right, something like that.
But many, many years later, he gets a random chance to reunite with Laura. His I don't know, in the language of the movie anyways, we're meant to believe is his actual true love.
This is actually my number one worst tradecraft. He was there with a supposed spy that wanted asylum and is like feeding him information. At that point, he had trusted him, but I wouldn't be going off and hitting on my old romantic flame right after, the same, it's presumably the same night that he runs into where he's hanging out with one of his assets. I think that's really unprofessional and is, it was a little bit of tipping his hand and it got him into trouble.
But
yeah.
it's really important for the story. Because it's the fight that they have over this that is what I call like the pivotal scene with Angelina, and in which it's for the first time they actually yell their true feelings at each other, and that it really is just about Eddie, and they are like they're only in this because of him, and she's gonna leave him over this, and but. Before she does, she really verbalizes and gets him, winds him up enough, this super stoic, reserved, ultra calm, ultra doesn't show any emotions, except for the fact, again, I feel like Matt Damon is throwing off these micro signals of what's going on under the surface through the film, so well. I just think that's of the things Matt Damon does, that's something that's my favorite thing that he does. Yeah. And it's important to the story because this really also clarifies the Eddie Edward relationship. And she is the one that's pointing out to him all the ways that, you haven't been there for him, but he's still he'll do anything to get your approval, and you have to protect him. And I think we already know at this point, he wants to get into the CIA. She's obviously not happy with that.
Right.
You know, he says, you know, don't tell me how to protect my son, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And all that is like, it's just really critical for all this to happen, for the ultimate like emotional payoff of the Eddie Edwards story. She had to be there, and she had to do all this like I said, like kind of unrewarding, just harried, annoying housewife kind of bullshit in order to get us here.
Right.
I literally say, Miss Jolie, we thank you for your service in this film.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, and another thing, this scene was added later.
Oh, really?
It wasn't in the original script, which feels funny to me because I think it's so pivotal. I think the whole movie falls apart without this scene. And again, also it's important that she's there because she has to say a whole bunch of things that Matt Damon can't say.
Right.
Because Matt Damon doesn't fucking talk to us. He doesn't tell us what he's thinking.
Doesn't say a single word.
Right. So, yep, she sees that Eddie's turning toward his father. She can't stop it. I'm out of here. Don't fuck up our son.
Yeah, right.
And that will conclude our tradecraft analysis of the early days of the Edward Wilson character, his introduction and training as an intelligence officer up into the end of World War II. Next week, we're going to be looking at some of the other major players on the board, including a close look at the Dulles and Wild Bill Donovan stand-in characters. And also, what the hell, let's do a deep dive into the Soviet counterplay against the up-and-coming CIA as the Cold War begins.
As always, the best way to make sure you don't miss out on that is to hit the subscribe button on iTunes, Google, or your favorite podcast app. Also, you can find updates on our Facebook page or website, spieslikeus.net. And please, if you can help us out, give us some feedback by rating us and leaving comments. We are always trying to improve the show, and your thoughts would be a big help.
The preceding transmission sampled the songs Ice Cold by Audionautics, Enter the Party by Kevin MacLeod, and sound effects from freesound.org. Attributions and links are found at spieslikeus.net. Editing by Todd Hostetler.